welcome back to another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about how to set boundaries. That was something I did not know how to do, but I'm going to share with you some tips that I used to set some boundaries and just some things that I have read in like some books and stuff like that because being a people pleaser to the wrong person can be horrible. And not just to a person, situations. I guess people are involved. So, yes, to a person, group of people, whatever the case may be. You have to know when to just, put yourself first and when to sit back and be like, okay, enough is enough. And understand no is not a bad thing. It's not. But let's get into it. In this episode, we will be discussing boundaries. What are boundaries? What it looks like, when to have none, comparing it to when you have some, when you don't have some, like all of it. Like I can sit back right now and picture a time in my life when I did not have any boundaries to a time now where I have boundaries and I care less. Do you hear it? Care less. Because at the end of the day, I've learned when you don't have boundaries, a person, if it's, they will keep on and keep on and keep on. And when you have boundaries and you like shut that down, they'll walk away. They'll go away. And somehow they'll blame you for it, narcissist style, but it's a good feeling. In the beginning, it's gonna hurt, but it's a good feeling. But also, when I just mentioned what it looks like when you do set boundaries and people walk away from you, or people will no longer want to be bothered with you because you've pretty much cut things off and you standing on all 10 toes. You know what I mean? But before we get into talking about boundaries, I want to share a little bit about my YouTube channel. For those of you who are just finding me, my name is Kelly. I have a beauty and lifestyle channel on YouTube, and I pretty much just discuss beauty, lifestyle for women 40 and over, doing simple makeup looks, nothing crazy, something for the everyday woman, something that you can do in 5-10 minutes. And if you want to get a little snazzy, you might put on a little bit more than what we normally do, but we keep it nice and simple. I recently started a new series on my channel that's called Life in My 40s, just sharing and being relatable to other women who are in their 40s. Like, just because we live simple lives doesn't mean that our lives are boring. It just fits our lifestyle. That's what we do. In addition, I also started another series called Aging Graceful Diaries. It's just me enjoying myself and really pouring into myself. It's okay to have that day when you're not doing nothing. It's okay to set a routine and, work it out. And if it doesn't work, you could try again. There's no rules to this aging thing. You know what I mean? It's just like enjoy. Enjoy. Just because it works for Susie ain't got to work for you and vice versa. Just we all have our own language. I just came to realize, you know what? I want to live a nice, soft life, and I want to do it exactly while I'm aging in this spot that I'm now, where I am now in my life. So let's get into it. We're going to be covering a lot here. We're going to be talking about what are boundaries, like I said, what it looks like, how to set them, and all the things. So, setting boundaries is crucial. And that's even in the workplace. Because I tell you, some of these coworkers, they will try you. And even like management, you ain't got to be disrespectful. You ain't got to be mean. You ain't got to be any of those things. But, just be stern without being disrespectful. And then they will understand. You know what I mean? So, setting boundaries are crucial for maintaining healthy relationships. And that's important, you know, protecting your well being. And I want to give you like 4 tips, just 4. We're not going to drag this out, we're not going to make it anything crazy. Just 4 tips on how you can protect your well being and not worry about what's going on around you. Because at the end of the day, one of my girlfriends, she used this term, and I've heard it before, but I haven't heard it in a while. And it was society norms. And we were talking about relationships. And she used that word. And I tell you, it was like everything that came to my mind, it was like, wow, we are like individuals in this world running around on society norms. We sit back, and if you look at how the world is designed, and what people will tell you is what you're supposed to have. And if you don't have this, that, and the third, your life is not going to be meaningful. You know what I mean? We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that. Society norms. Let me pencil that in so I can remember about society norms, because I tell you, in a previous podcast, I was sitting back listening to myself, and I'm like, that would be a great episode. So we just sitting here running our mouth, and next thing you know, that we have a new topic for the podcast. Isn't that something? Gotta love it. So let's get into it. Knowing your limits. Knowing your limits, before you set these boundaries, take some time to reflect on what you feel comfortable and what doesn't feel comfortable. And that can be, in any relationship. If someone triggers you, someone doesn't trigger you, you know, remove yourself. Remove yourself. We are too big up in age to be uncomfortable and being in situations because we just feel we have to. And that's just what it is. No, 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 no. We don't have to do any of that. Identify your emotional and physical and mental limits, you know, and that's how you know when you feel like when you in an environment, if you're talking to someone, back to the environment, being in a space, talking to someone, just being in different places. Like my therapist always tell me, when this is going on, how do you feel? What body part is tingling? Is your arm jumping? Is your leg twitching? How does it actually feel? And that'll let you know what your limits are, because you don't want to get to that point, because now you're trying to cope, you're trying to mend things. And if when you get around a certain person and you feel you can't be yourself, that's how you know that has to be removed. And even if you notice it, because we can observe other people too as well. If you know that you don't mean no harm to that person, but if you get around a person and you see that they're not comfortable around you, and they don't really want to tell you that you trigger me or whatever the case may be, or try to limit that, because you don't never want to make a person feel uncomfortable. And that's like setting a boundary. That is setting a boundary, because again, we are too big in age to feel uncomfortable in any situation. So, understanding your needs and values is essential to establishing boundaries and that align with your well being. It's all about you. It's all about you. And communicate clearly and being assertive, of these boundaries. Once you have identified that certain things, you know, bother you or you don't want to tolerate anymore, you address it. You address it. And you address it clearly, respectfully, and I can't think of another word. But when you do it that way, it will be received so much better. Especially if you're talking to someone who is an adult and who can understand, like, wow, I made that person feel that way, you know, or they're not tolerating that. So, you just you communicate that, you know, but like I said, once you identify your boundaries, communicate it clearly, be assertive, and to the irrelevant person that it is, or whatever relationship, right? And this is a good one. Say I. Say how you feel. I feel this way. I, because it is about you. Because you're the one setting the boundary. You're the one feeling a certain kind of way. So you want to make sure that whomever you're speaking to in this relationship, they understand that it's not about them and you're not attacking them. No, 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 no. And we don't want them to get defensive. We want them to understand that you're just sharing how how you are feeling. So I'm flipping the positions at this point. But just express your needs, your feelings, your want, and again, you're not blaming, you're not accusing. Just be direct, specific about what behavior is acceptable and what is not. And trust me, if you're talking to an adult, they will receive it. They will receive it and receive it well. And be consistent. You know, don't pick and choose who to have boundaries with. You know, have boundaries. If that same boundary is with one person, but another person can do the same thing, let them know that too. You know what I mean? So, be consistent and, reinforcing the boundaries and making sure to reinforce your boundaries consistently across different situations, and with different people. And if someone violates your boundary, you know, remind them and let them know possibly some consequences. Removal. And practice self-care. Setting boundaries can sometimes be challenging, especially if you're used to prioritizing others. Sometimes, you may be that friend, or you may go to a friend and you're always, dumping on that person. Be mindful. Be mindful that, they have feelings too, they have issues too, and don't always think that you're the only one going through something. You have to be very, very mindful. But, practice self care and practice self care regularly, and recharge yourself, replenish yourself, and, have your emotional reserve. Because sometimes you may not can pour back into it, but you got to have a little bit left just for yourself. Just for yourself. Because if you don't have any, how can you pour into the next person? That's something that I've learned. I felt like the pandemic forced me to learn so much. I felt like before the pandemic, we were living in a world where we suppressed so much because, we went to work. We woke up, went to work, got the kids to school, did this, did that. We've never really had a chance to kind of like stop, breathe, and look. But the pandemic pretty much made us do it. And so many things that was pretty much underwater with the soot pretty much just came up to the top of the water. And it was just like, wow, I had all this suppressed. Because I will tell you, what I went through, the ending of 19 and, all of 20, I'm amazed. I am thoroughly, truly amazed because I'm not that same person. And I'm sure you're not, either. But, taking care of yourself will allow you to maintain strength and resilience needed to uphold your boundaries effectively, and I am happy that I came across boundaries. Again, I thought I had some, but as time went on and me just moving on life in these years, here we are in 2024, and things started hitting the fan in 2020 when the pandemic hit. It was like, wow, I was a loose cannon, thinking I had it all pulled together. But I was moving through it though, getting through it, didn't let things fall apart, but like inside of me, kind of broke. But I got it together. So I know I'm not the only one that broke. So I know this can definitely help someone to let them know it's never too late. We all go through things differently. We all have a different time frame, and sometimes my enough may be a little bit longer than your enough and vice versa. You know what I mean? So set those boundaries, have good, clear relationships, and all that good respect stuff. And I want to say thank you for listening. And I'm happy that you are here. And if you have any suggestions for any episodes to come, please let me know. Leave them in the comments. And I will check them out. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.